Welcome back to the Dana Grant Show. And I have, wow, an icon in the house today. I have Brian Smith, founder of UGG, a $1 billion lifestyle brand. If you don't own a pair of UGGs or haven't worn a pair of UGGs or don't have children that wear UGGs, I don't know what planet you've been on. But in planet Earth, this is, I would say it's as normal as apple pie.
Right.
Have an apple pie. Brian, welcome to the show. I could go on and on about you on what you've done, but we're going to get into that because I love our conversation already. And I just want to share as much as possible with the audience because I know you are so raw, so honest, so funny and vulnerable that you're willing to share what it is you've learned through this process and what it took to build this. So
Oh,
welcome. Welcome
let's
to the
give it a
show.
go. Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess first question would be if I had to drop in, um, let's recount the early days of starting up. What did that take? What inspired you to create what is
Okay.
now one of the most famous shoes still ever?
Sure. It's very illogical. I was an accountant. I spent 10 years trying to graduate, and I finally did graduate and quit the same day because I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. And at the time, I was noticing that all the big trends were coming out of California, like Levi jeans and waterbeds and everything. So
Mhm.
I decided I'm going to go to California. I'm going to find the next big thing, and I'm going to bring it back to Australia, and set up for the rest of my life. And I arrived in California in July of 1978, and I spent the first 3 or 4 months. I rented a van and a house in Santa Monica, and the first 4 months I went surfing at Malibu nearly every day. Look, and on the way up, I'm looking at billboards and I'm looking at the Wall Street Journal, and I'm looking at TV ads and trying to find the next big thing. But it was in about the fifth month. The wind had changed. It was October, November, and the wind was cold and the water was freezing. And I was sitting on the beach at Malibu, pulling on my UGG boots that I'd brought from Australia, and I just got this amazing dose of goosebumps all over my body because I went, "Oh my God,
Ooh.
there are no sheepskin boots in America, and 1 in 2 Australians has some sort of sheepskin footwear." So I never went back to Australia. I just stayed here and did a bit of research, and I imported 6 pairs of samples from one of the manufacturers in Australia because there were hundreds of them,
Yeah.
and thought, okay, I'm going to be an instant millionaire. I had a buddy, Doug. We were going to go into this together, and we got the samples. He went on the road for about 3 or 4 weeks and came back with 150 business cards of every single shoe retailer in Southern Cal, and not
Mhm.
a single order. And he said, "Brian, they tell us we're crazy trying to sell sheepskin in California." And on the surface, you could understand why, because they think it's hot and prickly,
Yeah.
but sheepskin is amazing in that when you put it on, it breathes, so your foot will only ever stay at foot temperature. So you can be in 100 degrees outside or minus 30 degrees outside. Your foot's going to stay at foot temperature, right?
Oh
That
yeah.
that was one of the most amazing, and it's really rugged. You can't rip a sheepskin, and if it gets dirty, you wash it. So I did not realize these were actually obstacles into me getting going.
Mm.
But what I did discover that all my friends at Malibu said, "Shit, we got a pair of these. These are great," and I realized
Yeah.
that so many of them had been down to Australia and they
Yeah.
had bought half a dozen pairs back for their buddies. And so
Mm.
within the surf community, it was really well known. And
Yeah.
so Doug and I started going after the surf shops, and the reaction was incredible. "Oh my God, you're going to make a fortune." And so I'm sorry about this noise. I'll just stop for a second.
Oh, we don't hear any. I don't hear any noise.
Oh, good. Okay, it's
Yeah.
the garbage truck's out the back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and so anyway, now we knew we were onto something really big, so we raised about $20,000 and bought $15,000 worth of product, 500 pairs from Australia, and it arrived in the end of November. And Doug and I got everything ready, and we went back out to all the surf shops, and And the first thing that hit me was, "Oh, Brian, well done. You're going to make a fortune, but we couldn't sell them in our store. It's too expensive, and we just sell surfboards and trunks and flip-flops." And this happened all the way down the coast in every surf shop.
Oh, wow.
And here's the result of that. Our first month, our first year's sales was December, right?
Mhm.
Um, 28 pairs.
Oh, wow.
28 pairs. And boy, if ever there was a time to want to give up, that was it.
Yeah, that would have been it. What are we doing here? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but the bottom line is I couldn't give up because I got 480 pairs in the third bedroom, and
Yeah.
Doug went and got another job, and I started doing swap meets and street fairs and stuff like that. And we closed out January, February, March with about $6,000 in sales, and got a summer job. And the next year I advertised with all these beautiful models on the beach.
I remember that. I remember that was a kind of a catalyst though, wasn't it?
Well,
When
it started. I thought that was brilliant advertising, but the sales only went to 20 grand the next year. So another summer job, and then I got better looking models and another photographer, and sales went to about 30,000, and I just couldn't figure it out. But that nobody was buying these things, and
Right.
the biggest, we're going to talk about a lot of lucky breaks in this little interview, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. As long as you're in motion,
Yeah.
lucky breaks will happen. Well, I was having a beer with one of my surf shop owners, and I was explaining that I just can't get this thing off the dime. And he said, "Shut up, Brian." And he called out back to all these little 12, 13-year-old grommets who store their surfboards in the shop. And he said, "What do you guys think of UGG?" And I just couldn't believe it. Every one of them just went, "Oh man, those Uggs, they're so fake. Have you seen those models? They can't surf." And like instantly, I realized I'm sending the
Mm.
wrong message to my target market. And when I saw
Mm.
my ads through their eyes, I could see how fake they were, trying to superimpose sheepskin boots on a beach. So that caused me to, when you're an entrepreneur, you hit a wall, you got to figure out a way around or up and over, because sale, your business doesn't go from here to here. It goes
No.
along, hits an obstacle, get over it. Cruise along, hit another obstacle, get over it. So in my lateral thinking, I thought, well, I wonder if there's any young kids who are amateurs who are going to turn pro soon. And I had a buddy who was running a Scholastic surf team, and he gave me two names, Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson. And instead of hiring fancy photographers, we just went walking to the beach at Black's Beach in La Jolla and Trestles in San Onofre. And these are a mile to get to the water, always fantastic surf. And so I just took my little Canon Sure Shot and I shot a bunch of photos going to and from the beach. And when I ran a couple of those photos in the surfing magazines and action sports magazines that season, the sales just went to $220,000
Wow.
right overnight without any effort except running those ads. And that was the beginning of me understanding marketing in the sales of in the sense of advertising, right? So many of us want to advertise our product, which I'd been doing for 3 years. Here's the product, it's on a beach, look how cute it is. You know, well, that was just falling on dead eyes, right?
Yeah.
But when I ran these young kids, every little kid in Southern California who surfed was like, "Oh man,
Gotta have them.
I want to be in that photograph." And the
Yeah.
rule from then on for me for learning advertising was you'll only have a successful ad if you get your audience to want to be in the photograph, right? Whether
Mm.
it's a website or whether it's a Instagram or YouTube environment, you got to want the audience to be so into it that they want to be in the advertising. Well, I that turned out to be the breaking point. It took nearly 5 years to discover that. And
Mm.
once I figured that out, it was so easy to translate that into the snowboarding market, which took me out of California and took me all across the country. And I
Yeah.
struggled for a long time back east because I didn't know what they did in the wintertime for sports. And I finally asked a sporting goods owner, and he said, "Oh, God, Brian, they play hockey." And, being Australian, we didn't have that, right? So when I researched the hockey market, it was
Yeah.
twice as big as surfing.
Yeah.
And so I started advertising to all the youth. And the secret was by advertising to the youth who've got no money, but they can whine like crazy. Mom,
Yeah,
all the
exactly.
cool
Wine
kids
like
at high
crazy.
school have got
Yeah.
a pair of Ugg boots. I want a pair of Ugg boots for Christmas. And so it started this incredible demand. And if you had a pair of Ugg boots at Malibu High or San Diego High or, Laguna Beach High, you were one of the cool kids.
Oh
And
no, I'm gonna tell you right now. I had three daughters. They're now in their late 30s. Even in their
perfect.
school uniforms,
Yep.
I had to find navy blue to go with the school uniforms. But oh yeah, they had every one of them. It was a must have. And I think back then they were still like 160. It was
Yep.
like they had to have them. It wasn't
It was.
optional.
It was a tremendous movement. And
Movement. I would say yes, movement.
yeah, and when I recognized that, it was quite easy then to have a different story to promote it. But
Yeah.
really, one of the other big obstacles was that Americans don't understand sheepskin. We were talking about earlier how
Yeah.
rugged it is and everything. Well, I was in a surf shop and this girl came in and she was looking at the Ugg boots on the shelf, and she said to the manager, what are these like? He said, well, I don't really know. They look hot. Yeah, they sure do. Can you get them dirty? Oh, I don't know. Oh, man, they're expensive. Yeah, yeah. And then she put the boot back and walked out. And I realized there's a humongous problem here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the product's fault, it was my fault. I got to figure out what can I do to break this sort of cycle. And so I came up with the cheapest marketing campaign that I ever ran in 19 years I owned the company. And this was the cheapest marketing campaign and by far the most effective. I coined this phrase, the 6-pair stocking plan. If you were a retailer and you put 6 pairs on the shelf, I'll give a free pair to the store manager, right? So fast forward another month, and I was in a different surf shop, and this guy came in and he was looking at the boots, and hey, what are these like? And the store manager goes, oh shit, they're the best things in the world. I'm wearing them now. Well, don't you get hot? No, they breathe, and it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold outside.
Yeah.
And well, what happens if you get them dirty? Oh, I just wash them. And the guy paid $140. you
Yeah.
know, didn't ask any more questions. And
Yeah.
and that little tactic was the catalyst that I needed within the store to have someone credible be able to sell for me. And so
Yeah.
after that, I opened up hundreds and hundreds of stores, all on that same principle. Put a six
Right.
pairs in because I didn't want to load them up with 100 pairs or anything.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing you can do when you're starting business. Give them a little bit, make it successful, let them
Yeah.
reorder. And once they start reordering, they think they're on this train, and they
Yeah.
are on a train, and it's
Yeah.
like, you know, but
Yeah, there was no stopping that train, I'm gonna have to
yeah,
say. If you didn't
yeah,
have a pair of UGG boots for decades, you weren't cool. Even now, they're everywhere.
that's right.
Celebrities, anywhere you go, you're
Yeah,
still seeing them. But I love the fact that you pulled the curtain back and you showed the simplicity of seeing what worked, what didn't work, and doing it. And when I say those things, even with that cauliflower pizza crust company, well, this is what worked, this is what didn't. It was so simple. Even our logo was keep it simple. And I
yep,
often, as a coach, I tell people, "Okay, keep it simple. Why are you
yep,
making it so complicated?" I love the fact that you've illuminated one of the most successful billion-dollar companies, how you kept it simple and you
that's
didn't
right.
overcomplicate it. You learned and pivoted and pivoted and pivoted and kept moving. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love you
And
shared that.
the interesting thing is my story is going to be identical to yours with the cauliflower pizza. You have the idea and you're going to change the world and you're going to make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so you take the first step.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wrote a book. It's called The Birth of a Brand. A-
Ooh.
And
Ooh, your book.
yeah, my book. And the theme of it is that you can't give birth to adults, right?
Ooh,
Every
this is
entrepreneur has the big aha moment, millionaire, going to change the world. And then they take the first action. So for the first action for me is the birth of UGG, which was buying 6 pairs of samples, right? And
right.
now you're ready to go. and then it just lies there. It's like the very first surf shop owners. We couldn't sell them; they're too expensive, right? And it just sort of lies there, and it lies there, and doesn't matter what you do. You feed the infant and jiggle the cradle. It just
Yeah.
An infant can't get up and go to college, right? It
Right.
has to be an infant.
Mm.
But pretty soon your friends are
Mm.
starting to tell all their friends, and the magazines are writing articles about you, and that's
Mhm.
the toddling stage. And that's a really fun time because you're starting to get momentum. And
Yeah.
then it'll quickly go into the youth phase where production's working, sales and marketing is working, the warehouse is working, admin's
Mm.
working, and you can run a 20, $30 million company in that youth stage. But
Yeah.
if it's a great product or a really great service, you're going to hit the teenage years. And you recall when you wanted to be at every party in town on a Saturday night? It's
Yeah.
the same in business. You want to be in every major trade show and every mass retailer, and you can just wipe out your company so fast in that stage before you put the
Mm.
controls in and become a mature company. But I'm sure you can relate to that when you started the cauliflower pizza. It just sort of sat there.
Yeah. And,
Do you
and when that happened, when it started to really, which I saw it would, I exited prior to that, as a big and business partner. It just didn't work out. So when it hit that catalyst of growth,
Right.
it was, I wasn't left behind. I wasn't guided to take it all the way, but I saw the
Yeah.
vision of it. And of course I was thrilled to see that.
And that's very similar to me.
Yeah.
I ran it up to about 15 million in sales. And the
Yeah.
I was able to sell out at a really, really good time.
Yeah.
But if I had tried to hold on to it one more year, it would have gone out of business because
Yeah.
the following year's sales looked like it was going to be 25 million. I had no way to finance it. And maybe
Right.
we can segue into that because
Yeah.
financing is a
Yeah.
whole other issue in any business, you know?
Yeah, you were talking about the next level of what it takes to expand
Yeah.
and, and the knowledge. And it can be quite overwhelming when, like you said, the financing and holding space for um, the next level, which looks quite different. I'm like, oh, there's a board and there's a president and I'm not, it's not just owner operator anymore.
Yeah.
It's this next level of growth that you're learning as fast as you can.
That's right. And we both came into it with ignorance,
Yeah.
which is an essential part of any entrepreneur, by the way.
Amen
We
to that. I hope
we
everyone heard that. I hope everyone heard that from
we
the
came
founder
in
of
with
UGG. Yes.
ignorance, and looking back, my mistake was that I did not understand finance, you know. I would think, well, we just sold $1 million worth of product this year and I'm broke.
Yeah.
What's the answer? And being an accountant, oh, we'll sell 2 million next year and we'll have tons of money.
Mm,
But the problem is it took twice as much inventory, twice the staff, twice the warehouse
right.
space, twice, and I ended up after 2 million even more broke, right?
Right.
Had I had somebody that knew finance, because finance is different from accounting, right? If I had
Yes.
someone who could project if I was this successful with my sales program, which I was always exceeded my sales program, but if
Yeah.
I did, I had the money to buy the product to finance the inventory to ship it out, right? And that's the breakdown that
Yeah.
I had. And every year I was trying to get new investors in because the last investor
Yeah.
didn't have enough money to carry the next phase. And
Right.
that's when all the problems began, when you have to start getting outside investors in.
Yeah. Oh, amen to that. And what did that look like for you? You're so right. I can relate to this so much, not understanding the finance end of it. And I think for me, if I felt a little bit ashamed that I didn't know more.
Yeah,
That
me too.
And it's like, I need to know more, and I didn't. So I was ignorant in the sense, now I know in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I could have done this better, that better, and I should have known this. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs fail even, and I'm thinking of Amy's Crackers. I mean, I remember looking at their facility for the next level of ours because they were shut down because a Japanese company came in for the swoop about the largest conveyor belt in and built it up in Nevada and shut down their factory here because I believe they got it because they didn't have their financing in order and it could have been their taxes. I hope I'm right on that. if I remember correctly back then, it was their tax bill and someone came in and swooped this incredible company and they had their contract with Costco, which I believe they still do. And yeah, and that was
Yeah,
it. That was they no longer, were part of the ownership of
that
Amy's Crackers.
that's exactly
Or
right.
Mary's
That,
Crackers, not Amy's Foods, Mary's Crackers.
that's a common story. Yeah,
Yes, yes, it is. And I think a lot of people don't know this,
yeah,
that it's not, unusual to go into it not knowing. And
yeah,
like you, $1 billion brand now,
yeah,
and at
yeah,
some point you needed expansion and more financial
yeah.
wizardry, more information. Where do you think you could have done better at that point? Where could you have pivoted and said, man, if I would have done this, could have looked different?
Well, that happened, later in the process when we were, 6, $8 million in sales,
Hmm.
and I'd I'd had to bring in these new. This is a sort of long story. I'm going to make it as short as I can. Um, I Each time I got a new investor in, they didn't want the old ones, so I had to buy them out on a separate deal. And
Ooh.
now I'm in with the new ones, right? Well, this
Mm.
one financing after this is after about 6 or 7 years in sales. We're doing 5 or 6 million, and I got a group out of Anaheim, three guys who were already in the distribution business,
Mhm.
and we were all going to own the company 25% each, right? And it was the
Mhm.
best deal I could do at the time. And they were going to buy containers of inventory, set up the
Mhm.
distribution in Anaheim, and they were going to run all of the office and delivery issues. I was going to be 100% full time on the road, which I loved by now. I hated selling when I first started, but I now I really loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And there was one proviso though that I didn't get my 25% stock certificate issued until I finished a little trademark lawsuit that was in the background, which I
Mm.
knew I was going to win. So we signed the deal up, moved everything up to Anaheim, and I got, spent a week organizing them. And then okay, I'm on the road. So I went down to Huntington Beach, which is just near Anaheim,
Yeah.
and I walked in the door, and the owner, Terry, says, "Hey, Brian, I heard you sold the business." And I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I called an order in this morning. They said you don't own the company anymore." And I said, "You're kidding me. They said that." And I couldn't wait to get out of there. And I went to the gas station next door because this was back before cell
For
phones,
cell
right?
phones, yeah. You're like,
And
yeah.
uh, and I called up Anaheim and Neil, what the hell are you telling people? He says, "What do you mean? You're telling them I don't own the company." And he says, "Well, you don't." And I said, "Yes, I do. You're my three new partners." And he says, "No, if you look at the contract, you don't get your stock until you finish." And I just dropped the phone and I drove straight back to San Diego and I pulled out the contract and I read it and I reread it. And I went, "Oh shit, I don't even own the company anymore." And
Yeah.
that was devastating because I'd seen myself running this huge international footwear company one day. And so I went into this
Yeah.
incredible depression. It lasted 3 or 4 days. And I didn't speak to anybody on the phone, nobody personally except my wife. I didn't take make any calls. I was just like brain dead.
Oh, Brian,
And
I am leaning into this and I am feeling
okay,
every
so
moment of this. Every
for
moment
three
of this.
days, for 3 days, I moped about, and it was on I think the third or fourth night. I was in the living room and I was on my back on the floor. We were watching TV and the show finished and I clicked it off. And my wife, who was sitting up on the couch, was with me. And I rolled over onto my stomach and I got up on my hands and knees and I started crawling towards the bedroom, right?
Mm.
And my wife at the time, a really quiet person, she just looked at me and says, "You get up now and walk to bed like a man." She scared the
Mm.
crap out of me. And, and like as I got up off of the floor, it was like coming out of a fog. And I
Yeah.
started thinking, "Oh my God, there's so much more to life than this crappy little sheepskin company." And so the next morning I was back to being Mr. Positive again. And I did a lot of meditation. I have done all my life.
Yeah.
And I was meditating and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
okay, what the hell am I going to do with myself? And I started thinking, you know, real estate, no. Business broker, maybe. Accountant, never. And then I had this another dose of goosebumps, and I started thinking, oh my God, I've come to love sales. Now, what can I sell? And that's
Mm,
when the goosebumps hit. I thought, shit, Ugg boots, right? So I'm in love with Ugg. So I called up the guys at Anaheim. I said, look, I may never own this company, but I'm going to go on the road as a salesman. I'm going to make sure I can get every person in America wearing a pair of Ugg boots. And so we made a deal that they wouldn't tell anybody I sold the company. And I went back on the road. And after the first month, I got back to the office and he hands me a check or an envelope for, and I opened it up, it's a check for $5,000. He says, that's your commissions. Right. And so I went back on the road again for another month and $10,000 and another month, $10,000. And it made me realize that nearly always, and this is one of the quotes out of my book, because it's a book of philosophy and spirituality, right? Which
right.
happens to relate to business, but
Oh, yeah.
also your
Essential
personal
to
life.
business, essential to survive
The,
business. Yeah.
the theme that came out of it was that nearly always your most disappointing disappointments will become your greatest blessings.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I speak on the stage all over the world to
Yeah.
entrepreneurial groups. And maybe if any of your listeners want a really good keynote speaker sometime,
Yeah.
this is the theme that I asked the question from the stage. How many of you in the last 6 months had some disaster happen in your personal or your business life at the
Mm,
time you thought was insurmountable? And now you look back and think, thank God that happened. And Dana, every time over 80% of the people put their hand up. And so it's just one of those facts of life. A disaster or what other people would call a failure is
yeah.
only a portal to the next way you overcome it and
Yeah.
get free again. And it will happen over. And as long as you want to grow the business, it will keep happening over and over again. The universe is so replete. It's got everything you could possibly want on this planet. And if you focus your time right and your
Mm,
efforts correctly, eventually the proceeds will start showing up. And the setback is nearly always the
mm.
beginning of a new wave of positivity.
I love that you just illuminated that. I think it took me a little bit longer, but did your ego come in and did you struggle with the ownership part? Did you struggle with the release and you shifted rather quickly? And I
Yeah,
shift
well,
now quickly. Back then, I didn't shift so quickly. I still that
well,
identity, part of that identity was still like
yeah.
ownership.
Well,
Yeah.
my ego was severely tested when I went through that depression, but I
Yeah.
came out of it with a bigger purpose. Instead of me getting rich, the purpose was now get a pair of UGG boots on every American. So the
Yeah.
focus changed away from me out to the market, and that was very, expanding for me. Uh, in the next
Wow.
3 years. I ended up building up a sales force of 30 different reps in all the different states in America. And
Right.
I would go out and I'd travel with everyone, and they had to have their 10 best retailers lined up for a visit. So
Right.
I did this, 330 reps times 10 accounts is 300 stores, three times,
Wow.
over the
Mm,
3 year period. And so I got to develop this incredible rapport with all of my retailers on a first-hand basis. And so where we talked about egos and damaging egos. By
mhm.
now, I was like on steroids out on this. I was selling so much and I was making so much money on commissions
Yeah.
that it was ironic that I didn't own the company. Well, here's how the universe works, right?
Mhm.
And call this luck or bad time, whatever. But Neil, in the previous 2 years, had bought out the other two partners. So he now owned 100% of it. And he was in this motocross race and had a massive heart attack and died. And
Mm.
so I was like, and I'd already finished the lawsuit. He'd arranged to have the lawyers come in so I get my 25% of stock back. And the weekend before that, he died, right? So now I was left with his widow, and she'd never stepped foot inside the business. She had no idea what UGG was. And so I committed for a year to help her out. And I went, the book's two chapters just on this topic because it's like so convoluted and so involved. But
Yeah.
the bottom line is, I we had a life insurance policy that Neil and I did with each other, and even though we didn't get the medicals done, a year later, the insurance company called me up and said, "Listen, we got this on the books. We want to get it off the books by December 31. Can you come to LA?" And we negotiated a settlement that more than paid out Della all the assets of all of, Della was his wife, paid her off for all of the assets plus the profits for the year. And guess what? I was totally broke now, but I owned 100% of UGG again, right? So where, you look at yourself at the
Yeah.
beginning of this and say,
Yeah.
that's never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
the other thing is, once you're in motion, all of these forces in the universe will work to conspire with you. That's a thousands of years old, that saying.
Oh, yeah.
And you
And I
just
believe
have to,
that 1000%. So thank you for saying that.
yeah,
I preach that from the highest mountain every day. It's like, oh no, universe is for you, not against you.
yep,
It's not random, and
that's
everything is
right.
soul led, guided. If you could stay the course, the fact that you stayed the course, you showed up and became the best of your ability to sell and stay connected. You could have walked away, and none of
Could
this
have,
would have come back in fruition of leading you back to owning 100% of UGG again.
yeah. There's probably 5 or 6 instances in the book where I had, started planning to get out of it again because it just
Yeah.
wasn't working. It wasn't working.
Oh,
And
there you
and
go. There it goes again. Yeah.
every time there would be something happen completely outside of my control, and it would be like, oh my God, we're back in business again.
Yeah. So what did you do? So you got UGG back again. What did you do from there?
Well, now I'm wiser, so I did a much better financing, and I
Mm,
didn't lose control this time. I got a group to come in with letters of credit to get the production starting,
love
and
it.
that partnership, we rode that for 3 or 4 years to where I got it up to about 15 million, and that's when I was faced. I had, just so you know, it's not all clear sailing, and I'm sure you've
Mhm.
experienced this.
Yeah.
With the last tranche of money, my good friend who had the money said, Brian, if I invested in you, I wouldn't hear from you till you needed more, right? And
Mm,
he was correct. I was a bit of a wild card. So, but he said, I got a friend who's an accountant. If he can come in and look over your shoulder, then I'll invest. So I did not like this guy, but
mm,
he'd been in the accounting business with my financial partner. And so he came in, and his mission was not to build the company. His mission was to get rid of me and take it
mm.
over and then become the big ego that he was.
Yeah.
And so this is a warning for anyone who's looking at trying to grow and expand. His values were not in line with mine. Mine was growing the business,
Right.
increasing the value of the brand,
Right.
satisfied customers, expanded distribution. And his was, he would actually go into rooms with some of my staff and work out how they could sort of counter one of my initiatives and make it not work so I'd look bad, shit like
Wow.
that. And I know that everybody who has partners is going to have some version of these issues. And I write about a lot of that in my book as well, especially the
Right.
last years and how I was. Luckily, I was so politically naive. I didn't know he was trying to get rid of me until after I sold the company. I had no
Mm.
idea. I just kept working on making the company better and better.
Better, better,
And
better.
because he was so nefarious, he just fell away of his own lies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'll
right.
happen. That'll
Yeah.
happen.
So you've got to have this balance of how much do I love this company?
Yeah. You
Should
stayed
I
the
walk
course.
away? Should I walk away now, or should I hang in
Yeah.
there and try and beat this prick?
Yeah.
And it's not just the UGG boot business. I've started many businesses since, and I always run into the same problem with investors. Is
Mm.
they all they want to know is, how do I get on the bus? How do I get off the bus with a profit and make
Right.
sure my money's intact? While we're thinking, oh, he's going to be a partner in this. We're going to take it from 10 million to 100 million. He's
Yeah.
not interested. He doesn't want to join the entrepreneurial dream. He just wants to manipulate to get his cut out of it.
So it's kind of the Shark Tank version of where people go and they pitch their ideas and they
Yep,
buy percentages. I always want to believe that people are rooting and invested and they care. But you're right. No one cares about our company, our business more than us,
that's right.
and people always want a percentage in what it can do for them. So in those waters, and here you created a household name. People,
Yes,
like I said, if there isn't a pair of Uggs in someone's closet, I mean, I don't know what country they're in, because they're just, and in my house there was, they'd be lined up at the door. I mean,
that's right.
and different colors. We there it would just not one pair, and it was every color because they had to have them to match their outfits. And for
Amazing.
this went on
Yeah.
for years. Yeah. So, what would you recommend for people that are entrepreneurs and listening to this, or maybe they're getting started as an entrepreneur? And I know I was very green and naive, but I had a passion, a dream, a vision, just like you. And I stayed the course with this open heart and this trust. And we do get jaded along the way, but how can they stay in the process of the growth edge
Yeah.
of investors choosing the right people to surround themselves with? What would you recommend for that?
Well, the most important thing for young entrepreneurs is to get started, right?
Yeah,
So many people have, oh, I've got this program I'm working on it, but it's
yeah,
not perfect yet. And I say, well,
yeah,
get it out there. Well, I can't. It's not perfect yet.
yeah,
And but the minute you put it out there,
yeah,
the feedback that you get from your first consumers you'll find that they're on your
right,
side. They want you to be better, and they give
yeah,
you all these solutions to how to make it better. So the bottom line is don't nurse this thing because it's not ready. At some point, you just got to let it go, right?
do you think entrepreneurs are different now than back in when we started, that like just get it out there and hit the pavement? And do you think there's more of a perfection paralysis and
Yeah,
a bigger image?
there
Yeah,
is in a sense that that people have got access to different tools now. We didn't have
yeah,
the internet when I started,
no,
right?
yeah,
And now there's so many stories of all these millionaires and billionaires. And if you have a product that's not a physical product, let's say it's like a software or an app, you can put it out there. It doesn't cost you anything to sell one,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's that's how you can get into business and make a lot of money quickly.
Mm,
Um, but if you're in the products business, the more success you have selling that product, the bigger your problems become in financing the next level of
mm.
growth.
Oh,
Right?
that's so true.
It
That's so
is,
true.
and it's the thing that cripples product-based businesses.
Mm,
But the other thing is that even though we've got the internet, emails, podcasts, we've got websites, we've got Instagram and Facebook,
yeah.
the principles of marketing have not changed, right?
Mm,
Here's my idea. How do I get in front of somebody? And that problem's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, right?
yeah,
We just have a tool now called the internet, which can do it much, much faster, but
yeah,
it's also faster to get you to that point of infancy where you realize, shit, it's not happening,
yeah.
right? So you get there faster as well. And
Right.
that's where you got to make the same choice that I did. Do I hang in there and believe in this enough to make it work, or do I
Yeah.
just give up and walk away?
Love that. I love that. And you're right. Faster. I mean, we would be here right now if it wasn't for me reaching out, even though we were just talking prior to taping. It was like I reached out a year ago and you
Yeah.
finally, got the connection, but it was the right timing as far as I'm concerned. You know,
Good.
everything was just like aligned because I think there's so many people out there that need to hear this story because they get caught in that perfection paralysis. I need to do it right. I can't just go out there and do this. That's too simple. It's got to be more complicated. They've created these stories around it, like
That's
it,
right.
and I need more money, and it's got to look like this because everything else looks like this, and it's got
Abs-
to be a bigger launch. I launched a book last week, and everyone's like, "Where's this and where's that and where's your big launch?" I'm like, "I'm launching it. I'm just we're starting the launch. It will unfold exactly the way
That's
it
right.
needs to, and I trust that
Time.
process, and it's so soul led. I don't think a lot of people know how soul led and how grounded and spiritual you are, and funny, and I love the fact that you've led with such honesty and such integrity. and you just showed up. You just kept showing up. You just stayed
Uh,
consistent to that commitment. I love this product. I'm going to keep showing up regardless of owning it, regardless of being stripped. You didn't let you let it take you down for less than a week. A lot of people that can pivot and take them down forever. That's where they stay.
That's
And
right.
you disconnected, stayed in the love of something, and then the company came back to you a hundredfold. Who could have projected
Yeah.
any of that trajectory of what would have happened? And then
Yeah.
you eventually sell the company, and yeah,
Yeah. There's this great, I alluded to this earlier, but there's a statement that once you start out on a path, the universe will conspire to work with you, right?
yeah,
Been around forever. Here's
yeah.
how I interpret that for your listeners. When's the last time, Dana, you saw an advertisement for a refrigerator?
A
You
while.
probably don't remember.
Yeah, yeah.
If you needed a refrigerator next weekend, you would start seeing evidence of refrigerators everywhere.
Oh, I
You,
would agree with that. It's like the white car syndrome. You
yep,
start to, yeah,
you would see it in the
yep,
newspapers at Starbucks.
yep,
You'd be driving along a street and there's a window full of refrigerators, right?
yeah, yeah,
But only if you're in motion will
yeah,
the universe show these things to you, right? If you're still sitting on the couch thinking about getting into a business,
yeah.
nothing will ever happen.
Love
Even though,
that.
and I mentioned earlier, as an entrepreneur, you have to have a certain level of ignorance to go forward. Well, once you start going forward, you'll meet so and so who says, "Oh, I got a friend who's doing this," and you go, "Oh my
Yeah,
God, I'd love to meet him," right? Or
yeah,
there's a product out there that could really, really benefit what I'm doing. Or there's a retailer that's selling a product similar. I'm going to go talk to him and see what it
yeah,
takes to get on the shelf.
yeah,
And these are the universe clues being
yeah,
thrown. They're not being thrown at you.
yeah.
They always, just as
Yes, signs, just signs coming
yeah,
at you,
yeah,
guiding you. Yeah.
yeah. These things will just keep showing up and showing up, and once you get momentum, they get bigger and bigger, and then it'll lead you to an employee that you desperately need. It'll lead you to a financing connection that you
Mm,
must take up on. But if you're sitting in front of the TV,
yeah.
you're not going to see a single sign from the universe.
Yeah. So take action. I so am in alignment with that. I love that you illuminated and you expanded on that. So tell me, what's next for you now? What are you doing now? I can't imagine you're hanging out in Southern California retiring.
Well, I'm semi-retired, but I love speaking. I'm in a
Yeah.
new business, right?
Yeah.
And I wrote the book in 2014. I did the
Yeah.
audio version in 2022.
Love
And
it.
and everybody kept saying, "Oh my God, this is so good. You should be on the stage talking about this." And I didn't really think much about it, but I started for a
Yeah.
year, I gave like 12 free talks just to
Yeah.
sort of hone in my story. And
Oh,
then
I love that.
I finally realized that being on stage and talking is about storytelling.
Mm.
And I'm able to take people through these stages of what I went through, like losing
Yeah.
the company and stuff. And these
Yeah.
people are on their seats going, "Oh my God, what could happen next?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I've got a really, really compelling series of talks. I can talk about marketing. I can talk about advertising. I can talk about production.
Yeah.
I get into spirituality and how to
Mm.
overcome those nights where you lie in bed with this loop going through your head of disaster, disaster,
Yeah.
disaster. I talk about how to get all that out of your life, and it's just basically I love helping entrepreneurs
Yeah.
rise to the proper level. And so I speak all over the country and I speak all over the world actually.
Yeah.
And mostly
Paying it forward. I love the
big
fact
on,
you've taken a life's work and you get to pay it.
yeah,
You're paying it forward.
that's right. And I love, big entrepreneurial groups. I spoke at the Inc. 5000 conference a few years ago. That was 2,500 people, every single one of them standing ovation, because,
Yeah.
and
Love
I
it.
just, I just followed the president of Shell Oil and the guy who shot Osama bin Laden and, you know, and I'm the only one that got the standing ovation. And it wasn't because I built the biggest company while I owned it. It was because I was so vulnerable to share all the disasters that went into it. And so I have a really compelling series of keynote talks. So if any of your audience, especially if you belong to association or something like that,
Yeah.
where you have annual conferences and you want a really cool
Yes.
kickoff speaker or a final speaker, that's my wheelhouse, and I absolutely love talking to entrepreneurs.
Well, I can think of a couple right now that my wheels are spinning that I might reach out and introduce you to because I think they would really benefit. I love the vulnerability. I love the honesty. I love the simplicity. I love that you pay it forward and you pull the curtain back on all the things that people hear but don't really connect you to the source of what really is going on.
Correct.
I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that you did that, and such a like-hearted soul, and our journeys are so similar. I
I
love it.
know.
And the
I,
tenacity and the spirituality and the learning and the evolving. It's just, yeah, and paying it forward, and it's just,
excellent.
I love it. I
And,
I
and,
love
and
that.
any of your listeners or viewers
Yeah.
who have been in business for 5 years or more will know exactly what you and I have just been talking about.
And yeah, and if they don't, they're going to be nodding their heads like, yes, I don't talk about that, but yes, 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 and more yes. And I think you're absolutely right. Brian Smith, you are incredible, incredible what you brought to America. The UGG, again, it's an icon. And the fact your energy is still going strong, you're still out there paying it forward, doing all the things consistently that you did even back then, which is, what's created your success and still continues. And I love the fact that people that aren't seeing you right now, they're listening perhaps on just listening, they're not looking at YouTube, is that you're anchored into nature with the trees behind you and you're
Thank
just,
you.
yeah, you're just connected. You're just connected and in flow. I appreciate you very much.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Dana. That was really enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, until and yeah, we're gonna connect again. I have no doubt. I'll reach out. I have a couple of ideas of people that would really, really, I think, benefit from you showing up. And yeah, thanks for doing what you do in the world. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the Data Grant Show. I'm going to have all Brian's deets information. Hey, quick question: where do you like to hang out? Instagram, website? How could they find you if they're looking to have you speak or connect with you, or they have a question? How can they find you?
Sure. My website is briansmithspeaker.com. Pretty
Okay.
simple. And all my contact information, even my personal phone number, is on the end of the website. So if you are looking to book, there's tons of information on the website as well. But just give me a email. I prefer emails.
Okay.
Uh, get in touch with me, and we'll see if I can be a help, in your business or
Yeah.
your career or your association or whatever.
Brilliant, brilliant. I know that so many people are, I can feel energetically, so many people today dropping in and saying, wow, I can relate to all of that. And I think it's so comforting to know that we're not alone out there. And, sometimes we can feel full of shame and full of regret. And it just gives people permission to keep going, keep showing up, keep feeling all the feels, and stay grounded and connected to source. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes a good life.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. I love that you paid it forward. This is probably one of my most heart-centered, just connected conversations of not only what I've gone through, but the fact that you are illuminating the truth of what you could have talked about, could have been very different and
Yeah.
illuminated a whole different projection of story, but you just pulled it back and were so honest and raw. And I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Great, Dana.
All right. Until next time, everyone, thank you for joining the Data Grant Show. Brian Smith in the house. You're going to want to download this episode and play it over and over and over again, especially if you're thinking of being an entrepreneur.